So for making the back straps, you're going to need to cut out 8 of these pieces. So each strap is constructed of 4 pieces to make 2, so 8 pieces to make 2 straps. Now normally you would just cut one longer strip and it would just be a long strip, and then you would just fold it like this to make one side of the strap. But if you look at this fabric, just because of the design, if I had cut one strip like this, when I fold, let's pretend this is just one strip. When I fold the strap like this side of the my design is upside down, and I don't like that. That's why I ended up cutting 8 pieces. So this way, we would sew these 2 pieces together and to make one strap, and that way your back strap isn't going to have one side where the design is upside down. But otherwise, normally if you have a fabric that's all, it doesn't matter which direction the design is, you can just cut one whole strip like this, and you don't have to have an extra seam here, and you can just sew it together to the other strip. Now we can sew the back straps together. So we're going to put the 2 straps together, right sides together, and we're just going to sew the sides 1/2 inch seam allowance on both sides. Make sure to back stitch. So now we have the back stitch sewn on both the sides. We're going to trim the seam allowance down to 1/4 inch. So this is the back strap, one side, with the seam allowances trimmed. Now we're going to turn the back strap, flip it over so that the right side is facing up. You can use the point turner again. We're going to turn the back strap now to the right side. So now that it's turned to the right side, we're going to give it a good press again so that it's flat. After you press it flat, we want to again top stitch the 2 sides at 1/8 an inch from the sides. Top stitch both sides. These are the 2 straps completed. To sew the exterior of the bag together, take your fabric, exterior fabric, put them right sides together, lining them up on the sides and the bottom and the top, and we're going to sew the side, the bottom, and the other side at 1/2 inch seam allowance. Make sure to backstitch where you started and ended. The exterior part of the bag is now sewn, so we're going to take the side and we're going to fold it in, matching along the top and the bottom, 2.5 inches. This is for the size small. I'm going to take some clips or pins and we're just going to hold it in place. You're going to repeat on the other side, 2.5 inches. So the fold is 2.5 inches. And again, clip it in place or pin. And now that it's clipped or pinned in place, we're just going to sew again at the bottom 1/2 inch seam allowance, and make sure to backstitch at the start and the beginning. So after we've sewn the bottom of the exterior fabric together, we're just going to keep the pins up on the opening, and we're just going to press this fold down to get a nice crease. Be careful not to get the clips because it might melt it. Depending on the size of the grocery bag you make, the amount you fold in from the sides will be different as well, as you can see from this diagram. So for the stowaway pouch, you're going to cut out two pieces. There's going to be one piece that is slightly longer than the other one. This one is the front. So first, we're going to take this front piece and then we're going to fold it down and fold it down 1/2 inch, and we're going to press it. You can use a ruler just to get an idea, to make sure you have the 1/2 inch. So press it down from the top of the fabric, and press it down on the wrong side. So this is the top of the fabric. This only matters because I have this design that is going one direction. If you have a plain fabric or one with a design that doesn't matter, you don't need to do that. So after you press 1/2 inch down, we're going to do that again. Press another 1/2 inch down. Give it a good press. This is what it'll look like. This is your front piece. Now we're going to take it to the sewing machine and we're going to sew 1/8 of an inch away from the edge. This is just to sew this hem down. Once you've sewn down the hem, we're going to take the front piece of the stowaway pouch and match it up on the sides and the bottom with the back piece, which is the longer piece now of the stowaway pouch. And we're going to sew the sides and the bottoms together at 1/4 inch seam allowance. Make sure to backstitch at the beginning and at the end. Once the two pieces of the stowaway pouch have been sewn wrong sides together, we're just going to trim the seam allowance a little bit to about 1/8 of an inch. And make sure you clip the corners at a diagonal. Then we're going to take the stowaway pouch, we're going to turn it so that the wrong side faces up. And you can use a point turner to kind of push out the corners. So now the wrong side faces up. You're going to give it a good press. Okay, now we're going to take it to the machine and then we're going to sew it again. Sides and the bottom at 1/4 inch seam allowance. Again, make sure, don't forget to backstitch. So now this is your stowaway pouch. See, this is the wrong side. There is no raw edges. This is a French seam where the raw edge is inside. It's enclosed in the seam. So now we can turn it to the right side. And use the point turner to push out the corners. The stowaway pouch is finished. Now we can give it a good press so it's laying flat. There is our stowaway pouch. To sew the flap of the grocery bag, we're going to take the two flat pieces, put them right sides facing each other, lining them up. We're going to sew just along the side and the bottom at 1/2 inch seam allowance. Make sure you backstitch where you start and where you end. Now that we've sewn the bag flap together, we're going to trim the seam allowance down to about 1/4 inch. And at the corners, we're just going to clip it. Make sure you don't clip into your sew line. This just helps release the tension there so that later on when you turn it to the right side, you get a nice sharp corner. So clip all the corners and then we're going to turn it to the right side. Use a point turner to just push out all the corners. Now we're going to press it. Now we're going to take this to the machine and we're just going to top stitch 1/8 of an inch away from the edge, just to give this flap a nice top stitch. To sew the lining together, put the two pieces of lining right sides together like you did for the exterior fabric. And we're going to sew along the sides, 1/2 inch seam allowance, and then 1/2 inch seam allowance along the bottom, but leave a 3-inch opening at the bottom. This is so that later we're going to be able to turn the grocery bag inside out. And so at the opening, make sure to backstitch, and make sure to backstitch on where you started on the sides as well. Now that the lining is sewn together correctly at the sides and the bottom, we're going to do the same thing. We're going to fold it in on the sides. This is for the small bag, 2.5 inch, and then repeat on the other side as well. I'm going to give it a press. You can also clip it just so that it doesn't unfold. And then we're going to sew the bottom. Again, this part is left unsewn, it's open. Sew here. Next, we're going to mark the midline. So first, we're going to start with the stowaway pouch. To mark the midline, we just fold it in half lengthwise. And then on the top of the fold, we just cut a tiny diagonal, and this will mark your midline. So we're going to repeat that for the lining. Fold it in half, cut a tiny snip at the top of the fold, and this will mark the midline. Again, repeat it for exterior fabric. Fold it in half, tiny snip, and the midline is marked. And also on your flat piece, your bag flat piece. Again, fold it in half, tiny snip to mark your midline. Make sure you've cut onto both. This side's a little small, so I'm just going to make another little snip here. There we go. So now I know where the midline. Now we're going to baste the bag straps to the exterior fabric of the bag. So remember these fold lines that we had made earlier, and we had creased it with the iron, so that's why we need them. So now we're going to open with the exterior fabric, wrong side is up. We're going to open it, and you see how there's this crease line. So we're going to match one side of the bag strap along this crease line, edge to the crease line, and we're going to hold it in place with pins or clips. I'm using pins right now. And we're going to fold this bag strap in half, tuck it into the right side of the bag, and then you see how there's the other crease line here. We're going to match it again. Same thing, the other end of this bag strap. Pin in place. And then repeat on this other side. So where the fold is, there's a crease line. We open it, and we line up the bag strap with where the crease line is. Pin in place, and repeat on the other end of this back strap. The crease line is right here. So now that the bag straps are pinned in place to the bag, we are going to pin the bag flap to the bag. So we're going to pin, we're going to match at the midline. So the little triangle we cut earlier, we're going to match it. And also remember that the side that you, the bag flap is sewn to, that becomes the back side of the bag, of your grocery bag. So if there's a specific orientation that you want for your bag, make sure that your bag flap goes to the back side. So we pin it in place. Next, we're going to take the stowaway pouch, and we are going to put it on top of the bag flap. Now make sure your stowaway pouch, you have an opening here, that this opening is facing down towards the flap. So we're going to match at the midline again, that little triangle, pin it in place. So this is the back side of the stowaway pouch. It is up facing you. Pin it in place. And now we're going to baste everything together to the back. And also keep in mind that your seam allowance, the top part of the seam allowance, it needs to face the same direction as your fold at the bottom. So you see how this bottom fold faces inwards towards the middle of the bag? This seam allowance needs to face inward as well. So let's just pin that in place to prevent it from flipping to the wrong side and we accidentally baste it in the wrong direction. Make sure you do all of that, and then our bag is ready to be basted. So this is what the bag now looks like with all the bag straps, stowaway pouch, and bag flap basted. So next, we're almost there. We're going to sew the lining to this bag. So first, let's grab our lining. This is our lining. So again, just like we did earlier in the exterior, we want to make sure that the seam allowance at the top of the bag is facing the same direction. So let's just put a pin to hold that seam allowance in place. You see how this fold is pointing towards the middle of this side of the lining. So we want the seam allowance to also point towards the middle. We do it on both sides. We just pin this seam allowance so it's facing the correct direction. So now we're going to take our bag. This is the exterior bag. And we want to put the lining into this exterior part, and we want the right side of the lining facing the right side. This is the right side of the exterior fabric. And then we're going to sew it together at the top. So this is our lining. So in order to get the right side, we need to turn it inside out. So now the right side of the lining is on the outside and the wrong side is the inside. We're going to take this exterior bag, and we're going to tuck this in. We're going to just put this lining into this bag. Now, one thing to keep in mind, so we want this seam allowance of the exterior fabric and this seam allowance to be in opposite directions. This is because the fold on the lining is on this side, and the fold of the exterior bag is on this side. That way we just eliminate a little bit of extra bulk in the fabric. So we're going to line it up, pin the seam allowance, the lining, to the exterior fabric. And then we're also going to match the midline. So find the little triangle that we cut earlier, pin it in place, and then we're going to match out the seam allowance, the side seam allowance again. And again, the side seam allowance of the exterior fabric and the lining are facing opposite directions. See how the seam allowance faces this way and this seam allowance is facing this way. So they're in opposite directions. And then find the midpoint again, line it up, pin in place. And then we can pin the rest of the lining to the exterior of the bag. So now that it's pinned together, we can sew the lining to the exterior of the bag, right sides together, along this top at 1/2 inch seam allowance. So now our lining is sewn to the outside of the bag. We can turn the bag inside out to the right side through this opening that we had left on the lining earlier. So we're just going to turn this bag and flip it so that the right side of the fabric is facing out. I'm going to take a look. So here's our flap, and then the stowaway pouch is correctly sewn in. A lot of loose threads, we can trim it off. So this is pretty much what the bag is going to look like once it's sewn, properly sewn together. Okay, so now we are going to close this hole at the bottom of the lining. So we're going to use the invisible ladder stitch. I've included a link below for a tutorial, a photo tutorial, but here I'm going to show you how to do it in this video. So you want to just make sure the seam allowance is folded in And I've threaded a needle, tied a knot, hand sewing needle. So we're just going to start, bring the needle out where the seam comes out of. And then we're just going to make stitches. Take a stitch along the fold of the seam, and then the other side, the fold of the seam. The fold of the seam on one side of the lining, pull, the fold of the seam on the other. Go through, take a small stitch, like 1/8 to 1/4 of an inch. So now the hole is closed. See how it's hard to tell that you've sewn it because it looks like part of the seam that you sewed earlier. Now we're at the end. Make a knot. Take one more stitch. Make a knot by looping a few times around the needle. And then we take the needle back into the wrong side of the lining and just bring it out a little distance away. Maybe 3/4 of an inch. And we'll trim off this extra thread. And there we go, the hole is closed. So now the bag is pretty much done. We will top stitch just around the whole top area of the bag, just so that the lining doesn't keep rolling out onto the right side of the fabric. To top stitch all around the opening of the bag, and because of my fabric, one side I want to use white and the other side I want to use red, just because of my fabric choice. So I have a red thread bobbin, as you can see, and then the top I have a white thread, as you can see. So we're just gonna top stitch, sew all around this bag. So we can start here where the flap and the stowaway pouch is. Make sure you are just sewing on this side, the bag side. So this side, you want to move it to the right of the machine. You don't want it tucked under because then you will end up sewing, top stitching the flap and the stowaway pouch, and we don't want that. We're just gonna scoot the bag into the feed dog. Top stitch about 1/4 to 1/8 of an inch away from the top edge of the bag. And right now I have my stitch length set at 3. If you take a look at your top stitching, you'll see that on the exterior side, you have white thread, and then on the lining side, the thread is red. So it matches the color of your bag. So final part of making the grocery bag, we're going to apply some plastic snaps to the bag flap. So we're going to need some plastic snaps. So these snaps, we need 2 snap covers. They look like push pins. We need a snap stud. This is the stud, and then we need a snap socket. This one is the socket. So first we're going to apply the snaps onto the bag flap. So you can put the snaps wherever you like, but I like putting it in the midpoint, the center of the bag. Use a ruler, and about 3/4 of an inch away from the edge. So I'm going to use this owl and just mark 3/4 of an inch away from the bottom at the center. Poke a hole. This kind of just gives you an idea where to put the snaps. So we're going to first take the snap cover. We're going to poke it through the hole. See it on the other side. And then we're going to put the stud on this side. put the hole of the stud over the cover, and then we're going to use snap pliers. So make sure this smooth black part, the bottom, this is for the snap cover. So line that up. Now we're going to give it a good squeeze. I'm going to feel kind of like when you squeeze it, you'll get to a point where you feel like there's like a tiny little squeeze sound. And then you see how now the tip of the snap cover has been flattened. So this is correctly applied, and it's not pointy anymore. So now the snap stud won't fall off because it's been squished in. So now we're going to put the socket, the other side of the plastic snap, on the front of the bag. Now where you want it depends on where you want, how you want your bag flap to close. So I'm just kind of eyeballing it. It looks like it's around here where my owl is. So this is about 1.5. So find the center point of the bag. The bag is about 10 1/4. So 5 1/8 is here. And I wanted it to be 1.5. That looks down from the edge, so that looks right. I'm going to poke a hole, just like we did with the owl. Now we're going to insert the snap cover from the lining side. So you see how I put it on? And then we're going to put the socket over. Let's check. We like the orientation. Looks good. Again, the black side goes over the snap cover, the wide part of the snap cover. Make sure everything's in line. And give it a good squeeze. Again, you're going to hear a little click. And you see how the tip of the snap cover is now flattened. It used to be pointy. So this means the snap has been correctly applied, and we can snap it in place. Just like that. To fold the grocery bag into the stowaway pouch, first we're going to tuck in the sides along the fold. And then we're going to lift up the stowaway pouch and the flap so that it's facing up. So this is right now, this is the front of the bag. We're going to do it from the back. So turn it so that the back of the bag is facing up. First, we're going to tuck in the bag flap into our little pouch. Next, kind of flatten it. We're going to fold the sides in so that the fold is along the side of the stowaway pouch, and then fold the straps down. Repeat on the other side. Fold the sides in so that it's aligned with the width of the pouch, and again, fold the strap down and smooth it out and flatten it. We're going to fold it in half from the bottom, and then now we're going to tuck it all in from this folded edge. I'm just going to slide it into the stowaway pouch. And there you go. It's nicely stowed away.